Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be looking at solutions to the January 2022 Math Paper 2, and we're going to be looking at solutions for questions 1 to 4. So we're going to give you a walkthrough of the solutions and a little bit of apology here because some of the typing here in the questions, in the copying, it came out a bit blurred, but we can go ahead and work with it just the same. Question says, using a calculator or otherwise, find the exact value of 8.9 plus 31.6 divided by 0.75 times 5.4. And when a question says using a calculator or otherwise, I'm generally going to go with the calculator. Now, in doing this, we need to make sure that we at least show some of the working. So you take your calculator and you add the numerator here, and adding the numerator here gives us 40.5. And at the denominator, multiplying 0.75 times 5.4, that gives us 4.05. And at that point now we can divide. And once you divide that, you realize that your answer is 10. And so using your calculator and showing a bit of the working, then that is how we go through that. In this one, you will also need your calculator, just to make sure your calculator is in degree mode because this angle here is in degrees. So we say 3.9 times the tangent of 18. Now you can type that in directly, or you may choose to do it and do it otherwise. So 3.9 times the tangent of 18 turns out to be 0.325. And you can multiply that now. And once you type it into your calculator, you're going to get 1.267. Now the question says one decimal place, so that rounds off to 1.3. These questions are really designed to see if you know how to use your calculator and follow basic rounding off and things like those. So use your calculator and follow the rules in rounding off according to how the question would have said it. So we're finished with part 1 and part 2. Let's move on. Now here we have part B, and it says Rhea is paid at the rate of $13.50 per hour. So that's $13.50 per hour. During a certain week, she worked 40 hours. So how much did she earn for that week? This one, again, since she works for $13.50 an hour, we're going to take that amount of money and multiply it by the number of hours. And once you multiply $13.50 by 40 hours, we end up with $540. So pretty much simply just taking the rate per hour times the number of hours. Here in part 2, Rhea worked 4 weeks in the month of August, and her gross earnings was $2,463.75. Her regular week comprised 40 hours, and overtime is paid at 1.5 times the hourly rate. Now show that Rhea worked 15 hours overtime. In order to answer this question, we first must decide how much money does she work normally without working overtime. And since we know that she works $540 per week, we can take that and multiply it by 4. And multiplying by 4 here gives us $2,160. So normally she works $2,160 per month without overtime. Then this is the total salary. This is the total payment with overtime. So we need to do a subtraction here to say 2,463.75. That's $0.75 minus 2,160. And that tells us that the amount of money we have is $303.75. All right. So this amount of money would be paid in overtime. This is the overtime money. Her regular pay would be $2,160 per month by multiplying $540 per week by the 4 weeks. And subtracting here, gives us this figure, which is the overtime money. Now we need to work out as well the amount of money she gets for each hour overtime. So we need the overtime rate. And normally she gets $13.50 per hour. But the question here says that she's paid at time and a half times the hourly rate, which means that we multiply this by 1.5. And multiplying this by 1.5, 13.50 times 1.5 gives us 20.25. So this is the overtime rate, and now we have the overtime money and we have the overtime rate, so we can work out the hours. And so we can divide 303.75 divided by 20.25, and once you do this calculation, you will realize that you get 15 hours. So the number of hours that she would have worked overtime in August would be 15 hours. So first, find the overtime money, then find the overtime rate, and do a division here. And once we do that division, we end up with the 15 hours here. Next part of the question says, in August, 20% of Rhea's gross earnings was deducted as tax. How much money does she have left after the deduction? Now let's go back here and look at her pay. 2,463.75. So 2,463.75. So that's her pay, $2,463.75. And she pays 20% in tax, which means that she has 80% left. So her pay is 100%. 20% comes out as tax, which means that we have 80% remaining. And what we need to do then is just to find 80% of this, which one simple way to do it is just to take $2,463.75 and multiply it by 0.8. Of course, you can type that into your calculator. And once you type that into your calculator, you're going to get 1,971. You could have done it in reverse, as in to find the amount of tax and subtract it from this. So that would be one way, but it's a bit more efficient if we realize that since she paid 20% tax and 80% of the money is left, and just go ahead and multiply it by 0.8. It's the same thing as saying 80%, since 80% over 100 times the $2,463.75. Using the decimal version is just a more efficient way to work it out than to go through this, since there's nothing there to cancel out. All right, going to part 4. So this is her pay after the tax. Now, Rhea invested $219 of her earnings for 3 years at a rate of 4.5% per annum. This means per year. Simple interest. How much interest does she receive? Remember, the formula for simple interest is principal times rate times time divided by 100 gives us the interest, where that interest is simple interest. And so we have all of these, so we just need to substitute them into the formula. 219 times 3 times 4.5 divided by 100. And once you do that calculation, we end up with 2956.5, just writing that down, divided by 100. And that, in terms of the answer, divided by 100 gives us $29.57. And that would be the amount of interest that she would have received on her investment in terms of simple interest. Principal times rate times time. Use your calculator, get that number, then divide by 100. And you end up with $29.57. Moving on, that's the end of question 1. to question 2. Question 2 says factorize completely 3n squared plus 15np. So 3n squared plus 15np. Here we can use the highest common factor. And so the highest common factor in this question is 3n. So we can divide here by 3. And we can also divide by n and open a bracket. Let's just write that a little bit better, since our bracket is encroaching right there. So we have 3n, open a bracket. Now what we're going to do is to divide these two terms by 3n. So 3n squared, remember, means 3n, literally. And we divide that by 3n. And here we realize that some things divide out. And that leaves us with n. There's a plus there. And 15np dividing by 3n. 3 into 15 is 5. Of course, the n divides itself out. And so we end up with 5p here. And that is the factorization that we're looking for. The diagram below shows a quadrilateral with the length of its sides written in terms of x. So we have this side, that. And what we want to do is to write an expression in terms of x for the perimeter of the quadrilateral. Remember, perimeter means the distance around it. And express the answer in its simplest form. So we need to add up all of these. So just going to write them down. 15 minus 2x and 3x minus 7. So I'm going to put the minus 7 here, keep the numbers on one side, and a 3x there. Going this way, 2x plus 5, so there's a plus 5 here, and a 2x there, and a 2x minus 1. Minus 1 here, and a 2x there. So we are subtracting 2x here, but the others are all positive. And so we can just add that up. And of course, you could write it in a straight line and then group the terms. It's the same thing as we have here. So notice that this minus 2x and that 2x can take out each other. So what we have left here is 3x plus 2x, which gives us 5x. And in terms of numbers, 15 plus 5 here is 20. 20 minus 7 is 13, and 13 minus 1 here is 12. So we have 12 plus 5x, or 15 plus 5 is 20, and 20 take away 8. Same thing as 12. So we have our expression, and we could write it as 5x plus 12, if you don't want to write it that way. That is it in its simplest form. Moving on. Now, the perimeter of the quadrilateral is 32 centimeters. So what is the length of the longest side? Now, first we need to find x. So we just realized here that we got 5x plus 12 as the expression. So 5x plus 12 gives us 32. Therefore, 5x is equal to 32 take away 12, which means that 5x is 20. And the dividing here tells us that x is equal to 20 over 5. So x is 4. Now we want to find out which side is the longest side. So let's go back here a little bit. We know that x now is 4. So if x is 4, then this is 15 minus 2 times 4. 15 minus 8, that will give us 7. X is 4, so this is 12. 3 4 is 12. 12 minus 7, that would give us 5. And x is 4, so this is 8 minus 1. That's 7 again. X is 4, so this is 2 4 is 8 plus 5. 8 plus 5 is 13. So we realize that this is the longest side. And notice that these diagrams are not drawn to scale. It's just a random diagram. So we know that the longest side is 13 centimeters. And that would come from the side that says 2x plus 5 centimeters. That's that. Now let's look at part C. Determine all the integer values of x which satisfy this inequality. So notice first of all that we have a double inequality here and that we have a fraction. So the first thing we need to do is just to get rid of the fraction by multiplying the whole thing by 3. And multiplying by 3 here gives us negative 3. is less than 2 minus 4x is less than 3 times 5 here. 3 times 5 on this side is 15. So the 3 times negative 1, that's negative 3. 3 times this section in the middle, those two 3's would divide each other out or cancel out. And this 3 times that 5 is 15. And we have it in a straight line, which means that we need to get rid of this 2. It's a positive 2. So we're going to subtract it. So minus 3 minus 2 is less than negative 4x is less than 15 minus 2. So we do that minus 2 on both ends. And that gives us negative 5 is less than negative 4x is less than 13. Now we're going to divide the whole thing now by negative 4. And remember, when you're dividing by a negative in an inequality question, you need to reverse the sign. So once we do that division, then we're going to end up with 1.25. That's what we get on this side. 5 divided by 4, negative divided by negative is a positive. This has to be reversed, so it goes that direction. We have our x, and then we have 13 divided by negative 4 gives us negative 3.25. And so we're asked to write out all the integer values. Remember what integers are? They have this, it's a set of whole numbers and their opposites. And so in this group, starting here, counting down from negative 3.25, the next integer is negative 3, followed by negative 2, followed by negative 1. Then we have 0, and then 1. It stops here. This is 1.25, so we can't go above there. And so this would be the set of integers, all the integers which satisfy this particular inequality. All right, let's move on to the next question. Here we have the box contains 5 quadrilaterals: trapezium, rhombus, kite, square, and rectangle. And we are to do some filling in of the blanks. Now, some of these questions are close in terms of which figure should actually be written in here. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to explain something. When we say the test is dealing with two things, it's dealing with symmetry. So let's underline that, symmetry and rotational symmetry. Lines of symmetry, rather, and rotational symmetry. Now, lines of symmetry are those lines that when you draw it through a shape, you get the same shape, the same thing, when you divide it. So, for example, this is a isosceles triangle. When you divide it, this triangle is identical to this one. That is, you could fold this one exactly onto that. And when we say that, that's line of symmetry. For example, in a square as well. So if you have a square, then you could draw a line to the middle there. You could draw a line to the middle here. You could draw one here, and you could draw one there. And each of those lines would mean that the other part would fold exactly onto the other part. Those are lines of symmetry. For rotational symmetry, what we're talking about is if you should rotate the figure, spin it around in a circle, give it a fixed point as a center and spin it around, how many times would it fit onto itself during that 360 turn? And that is what we mean by the order of rotational symmetry. So you're going to spin it in a circular way and note the number of times that it fits exactly onto itself. So for example, you draw a triangle here and you take another triangle and you spin it around. How many times would it fit exactly onto it? And that is what we mean by rotational symmetry. So you have line of symmetry, rotational symmetry. All right. So let's try to decide which of these figures would work in this diagram. So this shape has no lines of symmetry and has rotational symmetry order 1. All right. 2 of these shapes can fit this definition. So a kite has 1 line of symmetry. You can recall that a kite looks like this. It has 1 line of symmetry. And if you rotate it, it's going to have rotational symmetry of order 1. But the question says that this one has no line of symmetry. Trouble is, when you draw a trapezium, you could draw a trapezium this way, or you could draw a trapezium this way. And if you draw it this way, you can, depending on how you draw it, get a line of symmetry there. But in terms of the best answer to choose, that's what it's dealing with, which is the best answer. The best answer here is that we need to use a trapezium. Generally, it doesn't have a line of symmetry. That is, when you draw it down the middle, you get the same thing on both sides. Generally, no. But if you draw it like this, you can get one. So the best answer to go there is a trapezium, because the kite, as we discussed, the kite has one line of symmetry right down the middle here. The next question is, which shape has exactly two lines of symmetry? Now, a square, as you notice, has 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's out of it. The kite has 1. The rhombus is like a square. So it also will have 4. So the next answer is the rectangle. So the rectangle will have two lines of symmetry. That is, you can split it through here, and this side will fit exactly onto this side. And you can split it through here, and this top part would fold exactly onto the bottom part here. So the rectangle has two lines of symmetry, and it also has 4 right angles. Okay, that one was easy. So this is a rectangle. And the last one, this shape has one line of symmetry but no rotational symmetry. Again, this shape, if you turn it to 360 degrees, it will have order 1 rotational symmetry. In fact, most shapes will have order 1 rotational symmetry, at least order 1. So I'm not exactly agreed with this section right here, but the best one to choose, in that it has one line of symmetry, would be the kite. All right, so that's the discussion for that. Now let's move on. Now the diagram below shows 4 straight lines, 2 of which are parallel. So this line, let's call it AB, and this one, call it CD. Those 2 lines are parallel. And then this line has cut through this, these 2 parallel lines. Now, you may notice that in the diagram here, you end up with what we call a Z angle. Sometimes we call them a Z angle. They are called alternate angles, right there. And so what we know is that this angle here is alternate to this angle here. And it says, give a geometrical reason why angle P is 71. Angle P is 71 because it is alternate to the angle here, which is 71 degrees. Of course, you could work it out and show it that it's 71, but this is what it is. So this angle here is 71, which means that this is 71, and therefore that one is 71. Moving on to the next part. Here we have a diagram shown below. The diagram below shows triangles x prime, y prime, z prime, and x double prime, y double prime, z double prime drawn in a grid. Here it is. The triangle x prime, y prime, z prime is the image of triangle xyz after an enlargement of scale factor 2 with 5, 1 as the center. So we know that 5, 1 is the center. Let's mark it there. 5, 1 is our center. And we need to find the triangle XYZ. Now, what we know is that we have the scale factor, and we know that when we multiply the distance from the center to our image, we actually use the scale factor to accomplish that, to get the image. So we multiply the distance from the center to the object, and that answer gives us the image. If we're using 0, 0, then we just multiply the coordinates. And we need to use that information to find the triangle XYZ. Now, what we can do is that we can draw some lines to guide us and in finding it. So here, let's start with there, and let's put a line here, because when we're doing enlargements, we often work with this kind of thing. So we draw them in like that, and then let's put in the other one there. So what we know is that our answer, the triangle we need, is going to fall on within these lines, within these bounds. Notice here that this part xy is equal to 2 centimeters in length based on the graph, and the scale factor is 2. So if we divide that by 2, then we get 1. Notice this side as well is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not x prime. That's y prime, z prime is 4 centimeters in length, or 4 units. So when we divide that by 4, we get 2. So we know that this side of the triangle must be 2, and this side here should be 1. And when you look at your diagram, you will notice that it fits exactly right into here. Let me draw that in using a straight line. So it will fit exactly into here. There it is. And that is our triangle. That is the triangle that we're looking for. And its name is Z here, X here, and Y there. This is our X, Y, Z that we're looking for. So draw the guidelines, the guiding lines. And once you do that, you look at your sides here. And let's see how you could reduce the image to fit back onto that. So this is exactly where we have it. Next part. The triangle XYZ prime, X prime, Y prime, Z prime is mapped onto triangle X double prime, Y double prime, Z double prime by a reflection in the line Y equal P. Now we need to find the equation of that mirror line. So this is the object, this is the image, and so we know that the mirror line has to fall exactly between them. So all we need to do is to count these lines. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the mirror line has to be in the middle one. So in between 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it has to be on the third. So we have 1, 2, 3. And so our mirror line is going to fall right here. Let me just draw it in. And so our mirror line is there. And what you notice, of course, is that the mirror line will give you the same distance on this side as on this side. So notice that we have 3 boxes across on this side and 3 on that side. And that's what the mirror line does. This is also a symmetry line. This is the same idea here. So it cuts this thing so you have the same thing over here and over here. So 3 there, 3 there. This is your mirror line. Its name is, it passes through 2 on the x-axis. So it's x equal 2. And that is our mirror line. And moving on to question 4, we have 3 functions. They are f of x is equal to 2x minus 1, g of x is equal to 3x plus 2, and h of x is kind of a little blurred. Let me just write it better. H of x is equal to 5 raised to the power of x. So this is the third function, 5 to the x. And what we need to do now is that we need to do some calculations. So we want to find f of a half. And f of a half means that we're going to put a half into f, or f of x is equal to 2x minus 1. So we're going to plug a half into this. So f of a half just means 2 times a half minus 1. Of course, 2 times a half is 1, and 1 minus 1 gives us 0. So f of a half is 0. And that means when you put a half into the function, what do you get? H of 0, same idea here. Remember, h of x is equal to 5 to the x. And so h of 0 is going to be 5 to the 0. Now remember that when you raise a non-zero number to a 0 power, the answer is always 1. And so that is our answer there. 5 to the 0, which is 1. Moving on. Here we have calculate g square of 3. Now g square of 3 is a composite function which actually means g of x. So it's g of x, which means that we're going to substitute g of x into the function, substitute it into itself. So g of x is equal to 3x plus 2. And so we're going to substitute the function back into itself by saying g of x is equal to 3 times 3x plus 2 plus 2, and that gives us 9x plus 326 plus 2, which gives us 9x plus 8. And so g of g square of negative 3, it just means that we need to substitute negative 3 into this. So now it's 9 times negative 3 plus 8, which means negative 27 plus 8. And that, of course, should give us a negative 19. Find g of f of x, given it in its simplest form. Composite function again, which means that we're going to put the f function into the g function. So let's write down the g function. G of x is equal to 3x plus 2, and then we're going to take the f function and plug it into it. So g of f of x is going to be equal to 3, remove the x, and put the f of x function, which is 2x minus 1 plus 2. That gives us 6x minus 3 plus 2, and that means that we're going to get 6x minus 1 for g of f of x. So that's our solution there in its simplest form. The answer is actually this too, but notice that it says in its simplest form, which means that you need to do the simplification and leave it as that. Next part of the question says find g inverse of x. Now remember, g of x is equal to 3x plus 2. So g of x is equal to 3x plus 2. Our procedure is that we let the function equal to y, switch the values, and then we solve it for y. And so solving this for y, we regroup that 2 on the other side, so we get x minus 2. Notice it's plus there. And then we divide. So we have dividing by 3. Then we get y is equal to x minus 2 over 3. And that is the answer to g inverse of x. Hence or otherwise, determine the value of x when g inverse of x is equal to 4. So that's what it says there. G inverse of x is equal to 4. Now, we know what g inverse of x is. G inverse of x is equal to x minus 2 over 3. And we're told here that it's equal to 4. So let's make it equal to 4. And once we do that, we realize that we have an equation here which we can solve simply by cross multiplying. So x minus 2 here is equal to 12. And therefore, x is equal to 12 plus 2, which means that x is 14. That's our solution there. And that's that. So that's the session for now. And in the next video, we're going to be looking at questions 5 to 7. I hope that you would have found it useful. Thank you for watching. If you're new to the channel, please remember to subscribe before you go. And of course, thank you very much for watching.